Hey, this is Jeff. We're talking about property and asset protection. We say asset because that's many things. It's not just the home, not just the property, not just the landscape. It's whatever. It could be the client's picnic table, their vehicle, the swing set in the backyard, their potted plants, our trucks, our materials. Okay, it's all things. How do we take care of stuff? One thing I can tell you, the biggest sort of hazard in the entire SoftWash business. We have a much superior, much better way to clean, but it doesn't come without problems. And the drawback and the challenge for us in soft washing is plant and property damages. Plant damages and property as well. We are working with chemicals that do a much better job of cleaning, but it poses the risk of also doing some damages. Fastest way to run us out of business is to damage the client's property or plants. Okay, we've damaged people's property before. We've damaged their plants. We've killed their plants. Fastest way to get somebody to hate you, not want to pay you, never hire you again, badmouth you to their neighbors, friends, family. You ever heard the thing like, one happy person, 1 out of 10 happy people will tell somebody about it. 10 out of 10 unhappy people will tell 10 people about it each. They like to travel. Bad news likes to travel quickly. Good news travels slowly. Okay. This will suck the profit right out of the company and just kill your opportunity for prosperity and future business. We're going to talk about property and asset protection. First damage to the company is in reputation. In the neighborhood, within that client's own network of people, whether that's their family, friends, co-workers, business associates, enemies, social media, all that kind of stuff, online reviews, other social media groups. The big trend in Facebook and social media right now in terms of our outreach is no longer the general Facebook ad. It's inside of the individual groups. Your Facebook community page. If you're into model trains, there's model train groups on Facebook. Whatever you're in, like that group right there. There are community pages right here in our community in Maryland. There's one, for example, that I'm now involved in over on Kent Island. So Kent Island is not a county. Technically, you could say you got Kent County, you got Queen Anne's County. That's not how it's divided up. It's like the pride of like, hey, I'm in Kent Island, There's a group there called Kent Island Happenings, and people talk on there. Hey, whatever's happening. Did you see what happened at the Shell station? Hey, there's a request for a permit to build a new Wawa here. We don't want it there. All that kind of stuff. This stuff too. Hey, I hired Superior SoftWash to wash my house. They killed all my plants. 10,000 people in the group. Boom. 10,000 people might see that message and say, no thanks. Or they do a search a year later going, who do you guys recommend for house washing? Oh, I see Mike's and Doug's, and oh, here's Superior. Oh, yeah, killed my plants. Never mind. Okay, that's real. That happens. Okay, online social media groups. The loss of the client when they fire us is we lose them and their future business, their opportunity to not just hire us again to wash their house and deck and patio, but to also do other services like holiday lights. We'll never stain their deck. We expand into dryer and air duct cleaning. We'll never do that for them. We'll never clean their carpets. We'll never provide any of those services. We'll never have a chance at putting up their holiday lights, their permanent lights, any type of service that we can provide for them, it just stops. The lifetime value of a client, when you look at their repeat business, the value of their network, their referrals, the fact that we're on their street every year doing something. Their house wash might last 3 years and their roof wash might last 5 or 6 years. But in between, we're there doing their sidewalks, their annual spruce up. We're cleaning their gutters. We might put gutter guards on for them. People see us at their house and they notice it's the same truck every year that's there periodically. They ask. We get business. When you stand in front of a client and go, well, the Smiths down the street, 2 doors down, they hire us on a regular basis. They've been a client for 6 years. that stuff adds value to getting other business. It's not just them going, hey, Mike, you ought to call Superior. It's not the direct referral. It's all of that. It's exposure. It's being in the neighborhood. It's a truck sighting lead. Okay, that's where somebody sees our truck and calls us. All of that value we lose, it's worth every bit of $50,000. Every single client that we have has the potential to produce an additional $50,000 of future revenue in the company. And so we cut that off, okay? Kill it, like you're trying to grow a vineyard and you just kill a whole section of the vineyard and that just dies and it's barren and there's no money there. And then what happens next is the additional marketing expense to get the next client to hire us, not to grow the company, to just replace the revenue that we lost when they fired us. And so we spend extra money to get back to square one, to where we already were. Okay, that bleeds the profit out of the company. Okay, here's the thing about we're not talking about that yet. Property and asset protection, it's easily controllable with training. That's why we're here today. Talk about things we do and don't do, okay, and all the other training that you'll receive. Adherence to the systems and procedures that we've developed, okay. When we hired you with great aspirations. All the same stuff we've already talked about. The mission of the company, the vision of growth for the company, you achieving your personal, professional, financial goals, okay? In line with all of that, sorry, lost my train of thought for a second. In line with all of that, in training you and showing you this, dude, I don't even remember what I was going to say. I totally lost it. Let me start over. The thing is about all of this, talking about property and asset protection, is it's easily controllable, easily avoidable to not do damage to our client's property and not get them to fire us. With proper training, which is why you're here, okay, to develop and learn how we do things, adherence to our systems and methods, the procedures, the processes of what we do, and holding people accountable to that. You holding yourself accountable to following the procedures and everything that we show you, okay? As we build that and develop that and it becomes the way we do things and it's just what we do, when we follow those procedures, when we hired you, we didn't hire you with the notion of like, hey, look, here's all the things that we can do for you and this is what you can do. You can achieve your personal, professional, financial goals here. And we're going to grow and scale this business. Big vision, big audacious goals of the company. We didn't hire you going, thank God you've arrived. Where have you been? We don't know anything about this. Boy, we would like to protect some property and assets. We would like to know how to SoftWash properly. But boy, now that you're here, you got all the tricks of the trade and you figured this out in 2 weeks and now you can teach us. We've cleaned 13,000 jobs. So before you got here, the people in this company and the leadership in this company cleaned 13,000 projects before you started, and whatever date you're watching this will be more than that. We didn't hire you going, hey, now that you're here, can you teach us how to do this? Okay, you're not stupid or we wouldn't have hired you. You're going to have great ideas. Things evolve and change in the company, but the proven methods that we have in caring for our own assets and caring for the assets of our clients and protecting their property have been proven out over years and years and years, and not just by us, but by other companies that we know in the industry, and by going to the original founders of the soft washing industry in the first place, learning from them. We have decades of experience that have allowed us to develop these procedures that look after the welfare of our clients, which is looking after the welfare of us. Okay, just to make that point. Let's talk about types of property and asset damages. What do we do that causes problems? There's two different, basically, categorically, quote, damages. There's damages that we cause. In other words, it's our fault, something we did negligently or through our process or something, stripping the paint off of something from putting on, we'll talk about the reasons how we get there. And there's also damages or problems with the client's property that we reveal. Not all things that are substandard and our clients need to correct about their property, or they realize are, a problem with their home or whatever, needs, in other words, additional maintenance, money, something done to it, is something that we did. We clean a home and the oxidation on the siding suddenly shows. We didn't oxidize the house. We just washed away all that stuff, and now you can see the condition of their home. Okay? Let's talk about personal property. How do we avoid either one of those scenarios? How do we avoid being on the end of the hook of like being blamed for? One, again, because we actually caused it. Two, because we reveal it, but we didn't prepare the client for that. Okay, how do we avoid that? We're talking about, from this point of view, for the technician. Okay, we're not talking about the salesperson. The salesperson has their role in getting up to this point. Work order's been handed to you. Now you walk onto the property. You're going to walk the property before you begin. If the client's not home, that doesn't mean you skip the pre-inspection. The pre-inspection with the client is so they get the benefit of our pre-inspection. The pre-inspection is done for us. It's done for the client too, don't get me wrong, but it's done for us. You pre-inspect the property and walk around to identify problems. You don't skip the walk around of the property and see an open window, or skip not yet seeing the open window because the client's not home. As soon as you can identify that you have an issue with an open window, if it's 8:30 in the morning and the client's not home, and you're going to get around to that window at about 10:30, you don't want to discover that at 10:30 and start the process of calling them and can't reach them. They might have checked their voicemail and text messages at 10:25, and they're not going to check them again for another 2 hours. When you get a hold of them at 8:30 and you can't reach them, you're working your way around the job and you can still be productive. You get around and say, whoa, got an open window. Production stops, go into skipping that process, going around the corner, coming back to that. We're more likely to, you could even, if you don't do the inspection in the morning, you might find that open window by going like this and realize you just sprayed in an open window. They left it open, but you're going to get blamed. Okay. So we walk the property before we begin, and we're looking for that stuff. We are intentionally, with effort, deliberately looking for issues that we need to address so that we don't get blamed for pre-existing conditions, okay? And that there aren't things that we see that we're going to reveal and problems with the property. Could be even like rust. When you see rust on the ground and you say, that's not going to come up with a SoftWash. You didn't hire us to remove the rust. Oh, no, that's why I hired you. Now we're dealing with that before we even begin. It's not a great scenario, don't get me wrong, to have to deal with it at that point, but at least you're dealing with it now, not after we're all done, okay? We're looking for the obvious stuff. Clothing, any kind of apparel, including shoes, personal items, things that are not hard mounted to the ground, that are of a personal nature that can easily be put inside. The skateboard, the pair of shoes, towels, clothing, they have a pole, all this kind of stuff, right? Vehicles that need to be moved from proximity to the house or whatever it is we're cleaning, particularly with roof cleaning, okay? And especially on windy days, okay? I'll throw this in there. It's not it's like a vehicle, but boats and RVs, particularly when you deal with boats and RVs, even an RV, they can have canvas and materials that go to that are not bleach compatible, okay? Their awning might be fine to be cleaned with our solution, but the materials they have on their boat may discolor from exposure to bleach. Not common, but more likely with the boat and the RV, and it's a vehicle anyways that needs to be addressed. Decorative flags, banners, things that hang on their wall. They have a stained wooden fixture, something they bought when they were in the Florida Keys, and it's hanging up on their patio on the wall, and we're supposed to clean around it. It's a problem, okay? TVs, equipment, all this kind of stuff. You guys have seen all this stuff, around the outside on patios and everything. Cushions on furniture are supposed to be removed. 20 years ago, cushions on furniture were still very commonly, even only 20 years ago, textile materials, cotton, okay? Today, 99% of them are color fast. They're not cotton. They're of some type of rayon, polyester material, whatever, plastic, whatever you call it. Except where you get to the highest end of homes. Then you got nice handmade stuff. You know, the more extravagant the home, the more likely you are to run into something like this as a particular issue. But cushions at very, very fine homes commonly can be other types of materials, custom made stuff, blankets, throw cushions, all that kind of stuff. I'll say next thing would be like patio and garden accents, the gnome, the statue, this kind of stuff. You said, well, we're not going to move it. You need to be aware of it. We're not talking about just chemical damage, dragging your hoses around. Take note that this guy's got one of those little lantern things that sits here like this. You drag a hose across that thing and yank on it a little bit, and that thing's falling over and you're breaking it, and they're hundreds of dollars. And the client's going to be very unhappy. Okay. Barbecue grills, furniture that needs to be moved, heat lamps, all this kind of stuff. Our clients have nice homes. They have extravagant furnishings that they afford themselves. And things besides furniture are things that are going to need to be removed off of the area. We're not even talking about the plants yet. I said sporting equipment, all kinds of miscellaneous stuff. This is the baseball glove, the lacrosse stick, whatever. The kids' toys, the little sandbox kits and stuff like that. Whether we, ping pong tables, whether we move them or cover them, there's something that are prone to not just exposure. All of this stuff we mentioned are things that are prone to both exposure to the solutions and the physical, like making contact with them, basically knocking them over, whatever, that kind of stuff. Then we look at what we call real property, not just personal property. Real property is the home itself. Now you're looking for things more on the line of like, are we going to damage it, or is it more likely that these are the things we're going to reveal that they have issues with, aging with, and stuff? Failing paint is probably the biggest one. Failing paint and siding material, whether it's the anodized painted window frames, fading paint there, rub your fingers down the aluminum or vinyl siding, or even hardy board. Hardy plank is now getting to be the age where hardy plank is more and more commonly oxidized. When I got in this business 13 years ago, hardy plank was a newer thing, and it wasn't so much like you'd rub your fingers down it and find that it had oxidized and the color of it was coming off. Today, very common. Okay. Painted and stained doors must be covered. They need to be addressed. We do not treat painted or stained doors. We cover them up. Okay. We can rinse over them, but we can't treat them. Failing and oxidized screens, whether it's a screen enclosure or the window screens themselves. Occasionally we get blamed for not setting proper expectations, and then somebody has a failed screen. The incident that caused us to stop cleaning screens altogether is a set aside service where you take them out of the windows and clean them that way. We put a finger hole, like a thumb hole, through a screen, which means it wasn't negligence. If it's so dry rotted, that means oxidized, aged, dried out, done, needs to be replaced. If it weren't in that condition, our thumb wouldn't have gone through it. Then there were the tattered screens in the screen door on the back porch that are from the wind. Okay. The neighbors' screens look exactly the same because they're in the same conditions on the same side of the house, but yet somehow our solutions caused their screens to come apart and were tattered and in multiple pieces like a tattered flag. Okay. And we had to replace all of them because they blamed us for it. It wasn't like that before. We had to buy new screens. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. So it's a ton of money. It was several $100s just to do a couple of screens. Holes and damage to the siding, especially, it can be vinyl and aluminum, not so much aluminum, but vinyl. But especially things like ephes, stucco, brick and mortar that's failing, holes in the brick and mortar. Not always easily identifiable trying to inspect a whole brick home, but the obvious stuff will appear to you and pop out. And you can see some of this before you begin. Spalking, I think is what they call that, where the brick pieces are from freezing and cracking or blowing off of the brick surface. Opened and cracked windows and doors. Open door obviously is a little easier to solve for, but not so much if they have their outside screen door closed and latched shut, but the inside door is open or cracked open. Okay, we need to identify those things before we even begin. They can cause further other consequential damages, and we will be blamed for them. Now we talk electrical systems. How do we protect against that? So you're going to have all kinds of things on a house. You have cable boxes, you have the electric box, you could have something separate to that, like a Wi-Fi box. Now you have solar panels, you've got those boxes and systems to look after. Some people have electrical panels on the outside, like an actual breaker box. Out of the weather, inside of a screen, not a screened in, but let's say a lanai, a patio, but it's inside, the fourth wall is missing, it's open, but you're inside here out of the weather, out of the direct rain, and up on the wall, it could be a friggin' breaker panel box. It might be decorated and pretty, not just some gunmetal gray box, but it's still a panel outside. You get them on pool houses and things like that. Even the electrical components to a breaker to an HVAC system. You have all kinds of things outside. Our solutions conduct electricity, the low end, you'd say 100 times more than plain old water. The pH scale, when you add more chemical, more free ions to a water solution to increase the pH, don't want to fry your brain with some math lessons, but it's a logarithm. That means a pH of 7 versus a pH of 8. The amount of available free ions in that water from 7 to 8 goes up 10 times. So if you go up to a pH of 12, it's 5 zeros away from 7. That's 100,000 times more available ions to conduct the electricity. Highly more conductive of electricity than plain old water. So water may not harm it, but if it gets inside with the solution in it, it will, because it'll conduct the electric and it'll go zing pow and fry stuff, and it can start a fire. Okay, it can start a fire not just in the component that you can see. That fire can go from where you see it and sizzle and crackle and pop, and the fire itself might ignite inside the wall where it's drier, not where you initially caused the spark and fire, where you have an electrical component sizzling where the power is not cut off to it and the breaker doesn't trip and it generates heat. Then it starts to melt the insulation. Then it catches the insulation on fire, and now it has a flame. Next thing you know, you got a real fire. That really happens in our industry. Okay, we have started a few minor fires where an outlet popped and fried and a couple flames, and had to put fire extinguishers on them and had the fire department called and stuff like that. We've never caused a big smoke, damage, fire, all that stuff, but it has happened. Contact, another hazard is contact, direct physical contact with the actual electrical circuitry can cause serious injury or death. Meaning exposed wires and things, or things that you need to deal with, or you're now wet and you go touch something, zing, pow, you're the conductor, okay? So that's stuff, and not just overhead lines, the components of the house itself. We always wear protective clothing. We wear rubber boots, right? Another good reason to have on rubber boots, right? More likely to keep you from grounding to the ground and going zing pow, and we're sending your parents flowers. Insulated gloves, latex gloves for protection, and you can even wear rubber gloves. We avoid areas that we cannot clean. If you get to a section that can't be safely cleaned because of these types of hazards, ultimately we end up communicating with the client, or if we can't reach them, communication means voicemails and text messages, and we skip sections of the house or whatever it is. When in doubt, you go around it. Mentioned this already, but electrical and utility boxes, whether it's the electrical box, the power coming from the street, utility cables, all that kind of stuff. We cover all these things we're talking about are things we can cover with tarps, trash bags, the plastics rolls that we carry, scissors, utility knives. We protect all this stuff with plastic and tape and sometimes rags. Rags can act as an absorbent. We'll get into particulars of that and when we go in practical lessons and show you how to do this stuff. But you can protect these components from getting wet in the first place. Sometimes caulk, zip ties are useful for like even just closing up a utility box. You go and close it doesn't want to stay closed. So you just put your own zip tie on it because it's busted for some reason and doesn't want to stay shut. GFI outlets, we talk about how we caulk them along the tops and sides of the boxes. And then again, still let it dry a little bit and then you cover it with plastic and tape. You got to watch out at nice homes. They have pull pumps that have electrical components to them. Same thing, you have breaker boxes, wires. Your pull systems, your pull pumps, and your HVAC condensers have, I think it's called RJ3, that 3-strand wire that's real heavy duty wire that runs from it. You got to watch out. Cheap, cost cutting, corner cutting electricians, HVAC people will replace a unit. You're talking about $15,000, $25,000, $40,000 jobs to replace this kind of stuff, and then they won't run 8 feet of new RJ3 to replace the stuff that's been there for 35 years. I've seen it at condos and apartments more than homes, where the solutions get on them and they're so oxidized, dry rotted, cracked open that there's 4 million little spots where it's hot, little glowing sparks where the chemicals get on it, and you got to pull there's like a breaker piece to it. You pull that thing out and you kill the power to that unit. But again, this isn't necessarily something you're going to identify ahead of time, but something we may get blamed for and say, well, it was obviously your fault. But these are the things that can be damaged or revealed. The electric meters, we've mentioned that, cable and internet boxes, paddle fans, as they call them, or ceiling fans. In our market, we call them ceiling fans, but fans with all those little individual attachment pieces in general are called paddle fans. And so we cover them. One of the things that we've done in the past, I think we'll reinstitute this year, is we get trash can lids, large trash can lids like this big, and you cut a slot down them like this so that you can go over the rod that comes down. You go up over that with that slot, and then you go like this, and then the big trash can sitting over top of the fan, and then you just need to put like plastic and protect. Yeah, you're not going to cover it 100% that way. You still need to get up there with plastic, but instead of just having nothing but a bunch of plastic and tape and everything and trying to cover this big contraption, you cover it with a trash can lid, and then you cover that with plastic. It's a lot easier to address. But we need to protect against them, and the breaker on them needs to be off for the cleaning, regardless of what we do. We can't wet them, and they have to be off for 2 days, exactly. Something else. All it takes is an accident of a flick of a switch. He asked, why do we tell the client they got to leave the switch off for 2 days? They go in out of habit and go to turn the fan on or the porch light on even that night. Zing, pow. It's going to be our fault. Okay? So they got to turn it off. Floodlights must be turned off. I remember the first time I cleaned around the house with a bunch of floodlights on it. Man, we zing, pop, broke every single floodlight. They had about 5 of them going around the house. And as we got it got dark. Obviously, the day went long, and I don't know if we killed all 5. We killed a few of them. I remember trying to clean around them and rinse around them and not get them wet. And every one of them eventually, pow, blows the light out. And now you got, now you don't just have the client unhappy because the light's not working. You've got a broken light that somebody's got to climb up there with a ladder and put a rag on and all that and turn it off. Unscrew it. It's broken glass. So don't want to do that. Cameras, if we can reach them, we got to cover them. Okay, we've had way too many problems with cameras. We haven't done that exclusively or always in the past. Going forward, we cover cameras when we can reach them, and we can pretty much reach them. Okay, any type of exterior camera on the property. Mentioned this already, or mentioned solar stuff like solar panels, but don't forget you also get those cheap little 12-volt or solar operated little landscape lighting things in the landscape, and they're cheap, and we easily get blamed for breaking them. Got to be careful of them, take note of them, not break them, not run them over. And that leads also to a new trend with all this permanent lighting systems. Best thing to do, most of them are not hardwired, they're plugged in. The best thing to do is reach up and disconnect them and leave them disconnected when we leave and let the client know they're going to need to be reconnected. Okay. Otherwise, same thing, they're on a timer or they go turn them on and components are wet. Okay. They're supposed to be watertight, water resistant. We do holiday lights, so we know the difference in the permanent lights, and they're still going to get damaged. So we don't want to get blamed for that. Other things that we can damage at a client's property, irrigation and plumbing. Sprinkler heads, need to make note when you identify sprinkler heads. When you're moving hoses, we'll go over lessons on how we properly move hoses. You don't pull against them. If the hose doesn't come easily, you got to go back and find out what it is so you don't break the plumbing. Huh? That's how you break the sprinkler heads. Only if you want to break sprinkler heads. Irrigation, the timers and the boxes, they need to be covered. They need to be protected. They are electrical components. Okay. Hose bibs themselves on the house. Frequently, they are poorly secured to the house. This is frequently. You go to an $8 million house and you go to the hose bib and shake it and it's loose. Okay. We don't use our clients' hoses. We don't. Sometimes we have to get channel locks to be able to remove their hose from the fitting. Got to be really careful with that. We got to identify that with the client that you're having a problem with that. Okay. Not secured to the wall properly or not secured at all or improperly or poorly secured hose bibs are a problem. We don't pull on water supply hoses either. There's a technique that you'll learn about how you hook up a hose, and it doesn't involve yanking against the hose. It's having it set up before you even connect it to the house. Anti-siphoning siphon fittings on the hose. Those are little plastic pieces and metal pieces on top of the hose. You go to turn the water bib on, sometimes you'll find that it already leaks. We need to identify that with the client so we don't get blamed for it. Generally, it's not something we're going to break, but we certainly don't want to get blamed for it when we find it's broken. We talk about don't force the hose off of the bib. Careful with that. Don't over tighten either. You over tighten, you can wrench things, move the piping. The break that you make may not be visible. It could be inside the home that you don't even know, especially if the client's not home. They get home at night, welcome to 2 inches of water in their basement, and we're going to get blamed for it. Okay.
On the over tightening, I've started using our yellow 5/8 garden hose threaded hamlock adapters and attaching that to the hose bib first. That way, if you do over tighten it, you strip that fitting instead of messing up their threads to the hose bib itself or our garden hoses.
I do that too. I use the yellow hamlock fitting directly on the hose bib. I attach our equipment to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good setup. So you just put the
Yellow female hamlock.
yeah, that goes on the end of your hose ordinarily. Yeah, I got you. Interesting. No, it's a good yeah.
If it's too low, then you gotta do it all the way.
Let's cover that again later. Hose tangles. We don't pull on hoses ever. When you're moving your hoses, there's a technique to that you're going to learn. We don't force them loose. You walk back and find out what's holding them up. One other last piece of damage here that you can do is driving off the driveway, driving into the landscape, running over sprinkler heads, running over mailboxes. Even just the tire damage and the damage you do to the landscape is concerning to upsetting to the client. One thing of the right word. Don't drive off the driveway, not just side to side. That somebody drive off the end of a driveway too. Okay, pay attention. Paint tint interactions. This is a difficult one. This is where we have darker houses with magenta, dark painted colors, blues, dark blues, purples, magentas, all kinds of shades that would contain that magenta or purplish hue to make the color that you see. The painting industry has gone back to where they were 25 years ago and are now, and have been for 10 years, using cheap magenta pigments that respond to oxidizing cleaners, knowing full well that 100% of the industry, 99% of homeowners and contractors use bleach to clean homes. They're putting magenta pigments in the paint that 100% will react to the oxidizing cleaners. And what did we say oxidation does to the colors of mold and algae? They lose their color, translucent. So when you have this color code and you go magenta, has a number to it. Let's say there's 48 is the value of the magenta in the paint. When that goes to 0, the color you get is now something else. Okay. CMYK. Cyan is your reddish. Okay. I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry. You're right. You lose. A point is cyan is your bluish. M is your magenta. You're going to lose that. K is your black. Y is your yellow. What do you get if you eliminate the reddish magenta? What you have left is black, which is just going to be part of what's dark. Everything else is what? Blue, yellow. Okay? What does blue and yellow make? Guess what paints turn color when the magenta goes away? Turns the homes green, almost exclusively. Colors vary. Blues turn to like a more of a brownish color, but you get a change in the color of the house. I know guys around this industry who have washed homes where they had a paint interaction problem. Well, I know a guy who has this story to tell. Went over to the client to explain to him. They came out and he said, well, can you finish this wall? I want to look at it. And what? You crazy? So he finished cleaning this wall and he goes, I like that. Had him clean the whole house, change the color of the house. He didn't like the color the house was. They liked the new color more. Had them clean the whole house. They got a new color to their house. That's the only person in the whole industry that I know that ever had something like that happen. Paint interactions. We're going to be doing more and more of that where we're having to test colors before we can clean a house. We'll talk about aluminum and powder coated finishes. This is not just the house itself. It's all the gutters. It's the fixtures. Okay. Powder coated is anodized painted stuff. It generally, it's a way of applying the paint that's supposed to make it last longer. And it does. You get sprayed and enamels and all that kind of stuff. Well, that stuff oxidizes in the sun and in the weather. Okay. And as it ages and powders, and you can wipe it free just like you can on vinyl or aluminum siding, you go and clean it and it washes off and we get blamed for it. Okay. It's not necessarily really damages that we say we cause. That's very much more a reveal. What we're good at doing is cleaning a house and giving you back the raw, naked house, like deep scrubbing of the underbelly of the beast. And we give it back to you. And then you don't like the condition that it's in. This is the condition it was in. It's like wiping away all the loose debris that's on your home. It would be like cleaning off the leaves off of a patio that you haven't blown off for 20 years. Well, when we blow it off, you get to see what the patio looks like and you don't like it. Well, your house and your fixtures, that paint is due to come off. Nothing lasts forever. It's a maintenance item. When I was fine before you got here, it wasn't. It's 13 years old. That's what it looks like after we wipe away the part of the paint that wanted to wash off. We just, with the oxidizing cleaning process, it wiped it off, takes it away. So we reveal the condition of the material. Windows, this happens in window frames. Particularly older, not so much the vinyl, but the older windows that are actually metal or repainted, and some high-end homes have some nice windows that are metal, not vinyl. Cladding, they call that. They have aluminum cladding over it and all this kind of stuff. And the paint needs to be redone. And we go clean it and knock it off, and then you can see the shiny aluminum when we get blamed for that. Strong SH, strong bleach solution can remove coatings off of things. It does not remove materials that have their integrity. It is not paint stripper, but it will, as an oxidizing cleaner, will remove those materials that are oxidized. We wish it did a better job on gutters. For some reason, it does a great job of cleaning the gutters and even getting some of the oxidation off. Better than a power wash does, better than downstreaming does. You learned that in doing, one of our techs here in the room has one of the power washing trucks at downstreams, and he gets frustrated with it because he's not used to the clean being so crappy and mediocre. He's used to our 12-volt clean, and he struggles with it because it doesn't look as good. The gutters too, but we still have to use gutter brightening sometimes. Different lesson. But you have to be careful. Anything that is aged, older, oxidized, generally we're going to be working at 1% and less to clean those, which again might go to a downstream as opposed to a real 12-volt soft wash. A couple things to finish up here. HVAC systems need to use the 3Ds come into play here. HVAC systems really should be covered. Going forward, we're going to be talking with clients about this. They need to shut off their AC condenser unit when we clean around it. It might mean their AC is off for a couple hours while we're there. They might want to be home. It means you need to turn your AC off. It means you need to turn all of them off. To protect their HVAC units properly, you really don't want the solutions to get down inside the condenser, down to the bottom where the coils are, and for that solution to sit in that pan where it can do corrosive damage, okay? We really want to be able to cover that, do our thing, and then rinse thoroughly through there and leave it and move on so that none of those solutions have any detrimental effects against your HVAC unit. They're not necessarily even going to see it the day that we're there, the week, the next. It's not going to cause like a pinhole in it the next week. But it's certainly not good for the unit, so it's something that should be protected. One last thing we'll talk about, property damages, things to protect. It's unusual. Some roofs, we could get into talking about copper gutters and all that kind of stuff, but the roof itself can have materials, metal roofs, stuff like that, things that are subject to oxidizing damage. We're not necessarily going to damage them ourselves. Copper accents to the home, copper on slate roofs, copper snow guards, bay windows. Yeah, the little awnings. Commonly, those awnings over bay windows are not copper. They're painted, and they're neglected and not repainted. And then the paint, as it comes off of them, again, same thing we get blamed for. But roof-mounted apparatuses or apparati, is that the right word? The roof should be inspected before we clean them or clean around them. If we're up there cleaning a chimney, we should be looking at that as well, looking for any issues that could be passed on to us. Also, one last thing I'll talk about is it's really related to roof cleaning, but we are the last stop, the last effort when we look at a roof. Occasionally, only a few a year, but we run into a roof when we get up there to clean it, we look at it and we say, this isn't a roof that should even be cleaned. We see those occasionally, very rare, but I wouldn't call it rare, but just a few a year. But we don't want to treat a roof that we shouldn't be treating. So in general, here's what we talk about. We have a little acronym, STOP. This is when you're assessing a property and putting in a proactive effort to serve our client and deliver a high quality, valuable service. Remember, we are there to do beneficial things to serve our clients, to make their lives easier. Our mission statement, we make home ownership easy by, we make home, God, I gotta be able to say it right? We make home ownership easy. God, I can't believe I'm stumbling on this. I know it by heart. We make home ownership easy by helping families maintain, protect, I think it's literally protect, maintain, and enjoy their whole home environment. We're not going to be doing those things if we do damage to their home, or they have things that are neglected and need to be dealt with at their home if we don't make them aware of it, especially before we do things they would associate with as the cause of what they see. So you want to be aware of your surroundings, the materials, the home, the garden gnome that you don't want to knock over. You want to be aware of the copper accents on the house. You want to be aware of what you're doing as you're doing moving around the property. Think about and look for think about what may be potential damages. We're always should be on the guard and looking out for these things. When we say organize your job site, it really has to do with having a standard procedure, having a set method of how we do this, and when we identify things, taking action on it, okay? And P, protect. We're always looking to protect our client's property. We're not looking for ways to do harm. And it's not enough to say, well, that paint faded and that's why it happened. There should be a proactive approach to handling the client with this when we see things that we identify as damaged, or damage that may be damage that we didn't cause, but which may be revealed by our cleaning process. Minimizing um minimizing or avoiding altogether property damages for our clients um, starts with the salesperson. But as a technician, we are the last line of defense, the person who's going to actually be on the property and see the things. And really, as technicians, we should pride ourselves on that and be better at identifying those things than anybody else in the company, because we get to see firsthand what they look like beforehand and learn to recognize that, so we don't get the aftermath of, oh, yeah, I've seen that before, without initiating with the client. Okay. We're going to talk about, we talk about property and asset protection, and we said it has to do with more than just the client. It has to do with us too, our own assets. We're going to have that in a different lesson, talking about the care of the truck and our materials, things, simple stuff like when you're done with an extension cord or a leaf blower, you don't leave it sitting out till the end of the job and then finally put it away. You put it away so it doesn't get any exposure to the cleaning solutions, mists, and overspray in the air. There's lots of those little things to cover. We'll cover that in another lesson. Or grow feet and leave. So that concludes our lesson on property asset protection for the client.